The ugliest habit I brought out of my last relationship was asking permission to breathe. It started like concern. Text me when you get there. Then, share your location. Then, why did your laugh sound different on the phone? I stopped telling stories with color because he would pick at each shade. By the end, I was a grayscale version of myself, apologizing for being out of battery, apologizing for staying late at work, apologizing for not apologizing fast enough. The breakup wasn't cinematic. No suitcase, no dramatic exit. I was washing a mug he liked and realized my shoulders were up by my ears. I turned the mug upside down in the cabinet so no one could drink from it again. That was it. I blocked his number and cried into grocery store napkins at a bus stop that smelled like rain and fried food. The first week alone, I learned the city again. I walked past the florist who always puts the peonies too close to the curb and breathes petals into the street. I sat in a corner cafe under a wobbly pendant light and pretended to write lists. Really, I just wrote my name until it looked like it belonged to me again. When anxiety pressed its palm against my throat, I counted tiny things. Sugar packets, ceiling vents, the beats between the espresso machines hiss and sigh. I saw him 3 times before we spoke. Same seat near the outlet. Navy sweater. Laptop covered in stickers from places I haven't been. On day 1 he moved my cup an inch inward so no one would bump it. On day 2 he asked the barista how her exam went and remembered the class. On day 3 he slipped on the entry mat, caught the door and said, "If you heard a thunderclap, that was my dignity." I laughed with my real laugh. The barista raised an eyebrow at me like, "There she is." He said his name was Alex. He asked if the outlet was free, then sat with a polite distance that felt intentional. We chatted about nothing. Weather. Why the cafe playlist always gets stuck on a 2014 loop. He never asked personal questions like he was owed answers. When I packed up, he said, "If the seat's free tomorrow, I'll try not to audition for Slapstick again." I nodded. I wanted to say please. Instead I said, "Good luck." That night my ex emailed from an address I didn't know. A long apology that wrapped back on itself, asking for coffee just to talk. I closed the laptop. My hands shook anyway. I texted my best friend. "If I say no, is that cruel?" She replied, "Cruel is letting someone sand you down. Block and breathe." The next day it rained. The cafe windows fogged. Alex held out an extra napkin without comment when he noticed my damp sleeves. He didn't fill the silence. He let it be a room we both sat in, warm and shared. I didn't mean to tell him. It leaked out one Tuesday when the cafe was too loud and my head was a crowded elevator. He asked how my day was and I said, "I'm trying to stop apologizing for existing." He didn't do the half-smile pity face. He looked at the table, then back at me and asked, "Do you want advice, a distraction, or just company?" I said, "Company." He said, "Done," and opened a puzzle app where little tiles slide into a picture of a lighthouse. We played it like we were defusing a bomb, whispering numbers and directions. When the last tile clicked, he nodded like we'd finished chores together. We started trading small rituals. I brought him the honey packets the barista hides near the tea. He showed me how to fold the thin paper sleeves around wooden stirrers so they make tiny cranes. He never reached for my phone when it buzzed. He never asked who was texting. When I told him my ex had emailed again from another account, Alex said, "Do you want me to help you set a filter?" And then walked me through it, step by step, his voice steady and unpressing. On a Thursday I had a dentist appointment and showed up late with half my face numb. He slid a straw into my iced coffee before I could make a mess. "You look like a brave chipmunk," he said. I snorted and almost lost the straw. The light over our table flickered, and he flagged the barista, not dramatic, just attentive, like he considered comfort a maintenance issue. I kept waiting for the catch, for the little hooks I'd learned to ignore until I was tangled. But Alex kept showing up the same way. Consistent, patient, curious without prying. When he asked more, it was about the book stacked in my tote or why I always smell like jasmine in the afternoon. I told him about the rollerball perfume I keep in my desk for the 3 p.m. slump. He told me Tuesdays were his hardest days because they pretend to be manageable and then suddenly aren't. We took our first walk after the cafe closed early for a staff party. The rain had rinsed the streets and left everything polished. We walked 3 blocks without a plan. A delivery truck beeped in reverse. Somewhere a neighbor played a piano with a sticky key. My ex called then, a number not saved but familiar in my bones. I froze. Alex watched my face then looked away, giving me privacy right in front of him. I silenced the call. My chest finally noticed air. "Do you want to cut through the park?" he asked, neutral as a weather report. We cut through. Leaves stuck to our shoes. On the footbridge he told me his last relationship ended because they were good at planning and bad at listening. "I'd like to practice listening," he said, as if he were talking to himself. I said, "I'd like to practice trusting quiet." At my corner he didn't ask to come up. He said, "Text me when you get inside if you want. If not, I'll assume you're asleep or annoyed at me and both are acceptable." I smiled around the key in my hand. Inside I texted just a photo of my dumb hallway plant with its leaves pointing toward the nightlight. He replied with a photo of his kitchen sink. Empty, caption victory. I slept through the night for the first time in months. The intrusion came as a letter. Real paper. Slipped under my apartment door. My name written in the looped handwriting I used to trace with my finger. My stomach dropped so fast I had to sit. The letter wasn't violent. That's what made it worse. It was a catalog of memories curated to make me doubt myself. "Remember the beach? Remember when I held your hair when you were sick? I messed up but love is complicated." He asked to meet for closure. He suggested the cafe. I took a photo of the envelope and sent it to Alex. Not sure what to do. 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then, "You don't owe anyone closure that costs you safety. Want me to walk you to the building office to ask about cameras? Or we can go somewhere bright and crowded. Or we can do nothing and eat soup." I stared at my screen until the shaking in my hands slowed. "Soup," I typed. He showed up with groceries and a borrowed stockpot because mine is the size of a hat. He didn't take over my tiny kitchen. He asked where I keep the knives and washed his hands like a PSA. We chopped and stirred and moved around each other in a clumsy choreography that felt like learning a foreign language you secretly already speak. When the broth started to simmer, I told him about the letter. About the way control can dress up like romance. About how I'd been taught to reward persistence with access. About how tired I was. Alex ladled soup into bowls, set them on the counter, and leaned on his elbows. "I like you safe and loud," he said. "If we ever don't work, I hope I never try to talk you out of your own eyes." I laughed because I didn't know how to hold that sentiment without breaking it. After we ate, he helped me draft a short note to slide back under the door. "Do not contact me. I will involve building management and the police if needed. No apologies. No explanations. Letters can be boundaries too." We didn't kiss that night. He left smelling like time and rain. When the door clicked shut, the apartment didn't feel like a test. It felt like a room I chose. 2 weeks later, a Saturday morning with cold sunlight, Alex texted a risk. "Date with me? Real one. You can pick the hour with the least potential for chaos." I chose late afternoon because light then is kind to faces and mistakes. We went to the small museum nobody visits, the one with a room full of ship models and a guard who naps. We read the tiny plaques like we were narrating to each other. He reached for my hand halfway through a sentence about a tugboat and then hesitated. I put my hand in his. It fit like permission I granted myself. We ended up back at the cafe as the sky turned the color of old paper. The barista slid 2 pastries to us and said, "On the house for the Lighthouse champions." Alex grinned. I said, "We are absurd," and he said, "Correct." At the corner table my phone buzzed once with a building-wide email. New cameras installed. I exhaled a piece of the old fear and watched it leave my body like breath in cold air. When he finally kissed me, it wasn't fireworks. It was an exhale into warm shoulder seasons. It was a door unlocked from the inside. It was quiet that didn't hurt. We still play the lighthouse puzzle on bad days. Sometimes we lose. We laugh anyway. Love, it turns out, is less a rescue and more 2 people moving a cup an inch inward so it doesn't get knocked to the floor.